Hey, what's going on guys? In this episode we're going to be creating a simple loot box system where it spawns randomized events based on what you put in a probability table. So I've got an example right here from a previous project just to show that this is scalable as well. So once you've created this, you can use this for all your different projects. So this one here I use for skins, and as you can see, every time we click it will give us a random skin. So this one, we've got this one, and if I click again we'll then see a different skin with a different tier. So as you can see, they've got different tiers and they're both different. So anyways, let's get straight to it. Alright guys, so the first thing we need to do is we need to either create a new project or just open the project which you want to be adding the mechanics to. Now for this example I'm going to be using the Platformer series project, which if you're new to Construct or still quite a beginner, I'd highly recommend following that tutorial series. I'm still not finished with it yet, but there's already 15 episodes and it covers all the basics of creating a platformer. With that being said, the first thing we need to do is we need to right click and we're going to be inserting a new object called Advanced Random. Once we've added that, we'll see on the right it has now added it to our object types, which now means we can reference that in the event sheet. So next, let's go to your event sheet. Alright guys, so once you're in your event sheet, what we need to do is we're going to be adding a probability table now. So what we want to do is head over to an on-start of, so if you've got an on-start of layout event, we're going to be using that. If not, just right click, go to system and then select on start of layout. Once you've done that, we're going to add an action, and as you can see we now have advanced random. So we're going to be selecting that, and then what we want to do is we want to scroll down and we want to look for create probability table. So we're going to be creating this, and then we just need to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it, let's just call it loot. So we've got a probability table called loot. And then on top of that, we need to once again go into advanced random and we want to set that as the current table we're using. So then once again, we'll just go right here, set probability table. And then just make sure you put the same name as we set before, so loot. So now when we start the layout, it's going to be creating this probability table and then setting that as the one we're using. So on top of that, now what we want to do is we want to actually add what's inside of that table. So all in this same layout, we can just do this. So once again, advanced random. And now what we want to do is we want to add a probability entry. So select that. And now these entries, these are all the different items that you want to be included inside of this loot box. So for example, this one here, we could call this one coins. And then, so over on entry weight, that is another word for the rarity or the probability of that being spawned. So depending on how you want to go about this, let's say you could have different tiers. Let's say you had 4 different rarity tiers, you could set that from 4 being, less likely, whereas 1 being more likely. Or you could, if you just have different items, you just have to work out what you want to be used. So for now, let's just keep everything at 1, so it's all equal. And then what we can do is we can just Control-C, Control-V this a few times. And we will just make a few examples, so maybe we'd have some gems. And again, this can be used for anything. They can use for skins or things like that. And I'll be creating a part 2 of this series down the line, which is a more advanced version, where we'll be going through how to refactor this to work like the previous example, so you could actually create a skin system, and for that you need to use dictionaries and things like that. So it's a little more advanced, but for now we'll just be creating a simpler system. So we've got coins, gems, what else could we have? We could add a health power up maybe. This is just for an example, so just use whatever you like, whatever you actually want in your loot box. This is now the time to add whatever you want. Okay, great. So once you've done that, you've now created a probability table. You've told the engine this is the table you want to use, and you've told it what items and their weight are inside of it. So for this, I will actually let's set the we'll set the health to 2, and I'll also set the gems to 2, just so you can more visually see the the tiers working. Now next, all we need to do is we need to come over to the top, and we're going to right click. And we're going to create a global variable, and we're going to be calling this loot dropped. I want to set this to a string. So this variable here, this is what's going to be used to say, once this table has selected a item, we're going to be updating this variable with that name, and then we're going to be using that to be able to say, to give the action of, if it equals to gems, drop a gem. If it equals to coins, drop a coin. Okay, so next let's just go back to your page, and what we need to do is we need to actually have some sort of item to interact with. Now again, if you're wanting to do this for a menu kind of system, you don't need to do this, but for this I'm going to be making it so that when the character interacts with a chest, we're going to trigger the event and spawn the items. Now for this, let's just create an example object. So we'll right click, we'll create a new sprite, and we can just call this loot box. We can double click to edit it, and then let's just give it a color. So we'll give it a gold color or something. That'll do. Okay, great. So we've now got this box here. Okay, so next go back into your event sheet, and we're going to be setting up the firing event. So for this, to keep it all nice and organized, I'm going to create a new group, and I'm just going to call it loot box. And so now what we're going to say is we want to say on interaction with the loot box, and we're going to create a basic interaction for this example, and then when it does it, we're going to make the probability table give us an item, and then we're going to set it. So we'll say, what we can say is, so again, if you're following this tutorial series, you'll already have the character, so we can use the character, and then we could add another condition, keyboard, on key pressed, and we'll just say F key. So now once the F key is pressed, whilst we're overlapping the loot box, and now what we want to do is we want to go system, set value, and we're going to be setting the loot dropped value we just set. And now what we want to do is we want to set this to advanced random dot weighted. So what this is going to do is this is going to pull in a number from that box. So now when we do this, it's going to set the variable we created to one of these up here that we added, one of these entries. So it'll either set it to coins, gems, or health, for example. Great. And so now we've done this, we want to make it so that once we actually get this number, we need to do something, right? So we want to add a new event, and we can go system, compare variable, and we can say, so if the loot drop is equal to coins, for example, we now want it to spawn a coin. So we can say loot box, spawn another object, coins, we'll put it on the main layer, and then we'll just duplicate this a few times. And for this example, we did gems and we did health. Again, if you've done different items, that's completely fine. Just make sure you put them all in here. Okay, I just need to create an item for the gems. So I'm going to come in here, insert new object, sprite, and for now, we'll just do some sort of demonstration object. So we'll just, like this will do, call it gem. Okay, great. So just like that, we should already have the fundamental basics of retrieving and spawning a random item. So let's test this. So as you can see, we're in our layout. Well, once we're interacting with the loot box, we'll press F, and as you can see, it spawned an item. Now, as you can also see, we have a problem right now. So what this means is, right now it does not know when to stop and when to. So right now it's just constantly firing off this event. So what we need to do is we need to go back to the event sheet, and the issue is quite obvious, right? So what we need to do is we need to make sure that this is only spawning this once. Now again, this is conditional to how you want this loot box to work. For this current example though, we just want to spawn these items once. So we're going to right click on here, we're going to add a new condition, system, and we want to say trigger once while true. Just duplicate this in here. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm also just going to right click here, I'm going to add a blank sub event, and I'm going to pull this into here, like this. So now these two functions are just separate, so the overlapping and the F key are not connected. And then we can just set these three and drag them into here like this. So now on F key pressed, set it to the advanced random, and then we have the three events right here. Alright, so let's test this again, guys. And as you can see, if we hover over, when we press F, as you can see, it spawns the items, like so. If you keep pressing F, and it'll randomly spawn each of these items as we go through. Alright guys, so that's it for this episode. I'm gonna leave it here just because I want it to keep it nice and simple. I don't want it being too confusing with something like this, because this is a system that can get more complex, but this here shows the basics, you know, and this works great. I mean, this is how you'd create very simple but working loot box systems in your games. So I hope you enjoyed, and take care guys, I'll see you in the next one.